You are now listening to
Likely to Dispute.
hosted by Monkas, Reed, and Tyler.
How's everybody doing? It's Cevan, aka the Monkas. Join with me today, as always, is Reed and Tyler, and this is episode 53 of Likely to Dispute.
We have another very fun episode today. Following the conclusion of our rookie draft last week, we are going to go over each team's selections from the draft, go over our grades, any thoughts that we had on what went down, trades, picks, who was left on the board, who was a steal, who drafted well, who didn't. All that will be coming up here. But we're just going to jump right into it. We think it's going to be a long episode. This is always a fun one for us, so we're just going to jump right into it. So for the episode, we're going to go team by team here. We're going to give our individual grades for how we think they did. And we tried to evaluate these independent of trades. So obviously there were a lot of trades that go down every year in the draft. So we're trying not to evaluate what was given up to pick in certain spots, more so who did they pick in those spots, and more importantly, who did they not choose in those spots? Were there better players they could have chosen in those spots, and who did they leave? Essentially the opportunity cost of who they picked. So that was what we shot for. We will mention trades because the trades are a very important part of the draft process, but at the same time, we did not factor those in when we were giving our grades. Any other thoughts from you guys before we get started here?
Yeah, I think it's worth just throwing out the caveat that it's not personal. I feel like everyone would know that with our grades, and I don't think any of us don't get too hard on anyone, but just worth putting out there at least.
Monkas, anything from you?
Nope, let's go.
Okay, going in alphabetical order here. We're starting with Cam K, aka Greg's Lobos. We're here. Very widespread here distribution on the very first one. Not all of them are like this, so don't take it for granted. But we do have an important trade to note right at the top. He did trade the 105 selection that he held going into the draft. He traded that to our co-host Monkas here for Rome Odunze and Jonathan Brooks. But off the bat here, plugging that number 2 running back spot with the presumed starter for the world champion Seahawks, heavy on the receivers in the middle rounds, and then Mr. Irrelevant doesn't even have an age listed in Sleeper, who I don't even know who that is. So, Tyler, we're going to start with you here. You are the low man on Cam K's draft. You're giving him a D. Why is that?
I'll just start out here. I think Jadarian Price is, besides the 101, maybe the pick that, I guess at 106, it almost always feels like it's been Jadarian Price in any drafts I've seen, and that's how it played out in our draft here. So, I mean, he still clicked the button there, so that's a good pick there. I came in a bit lower here because I personally am not a big fan of Zachariah Branch or Malachi Fields, both of whom were K's second-round picks. There were some other wide receivers in that range that I liked more than both those guys. If he snagged those guys in the later part of the third round or the fourth round, I would have been a bit more okay with that. But both those guys in the second round were a little bit of a reach for me personally. I actually do like the Stribling value he got at 305. Not a Stribling fan myself, but at the 305 spot there, Stribling was a second round wide receiver, so I think there is good value in that. And then Jamari Taylor, he is running back from Virginia. I'll just maybe I don't know what I'm saying. I guess I probably put a little too much stock in the fourth round compared to you guys with some of these picks. I get that all these guys have a pretty small percentage chance of hitting, but there's some other guys that I liked at 412 that ended up going undrafted. But
You're criticizing the last pick in the draft here, man.
Matt, I knew this was going to happen. I won't do it for every pick, I promise.
I did want to know, the big thing I had was I thought Stribling was a great value. Again, not necessarily that I'm a Stribling fan, but he was pick 33 in the NFL draft as a whole, and he got him nearly at pick 33 in our draft. Not exactly. It was 29, but still, I feel like that's great value, slid down the board, but also not really slid down the board because his ADP was so low in sleepers. But regardless, I'd agree. I'd concur with your analysis here. Not a huge Branch or Fields guy, but I thought the Stribling pick made up for it, which is kind of how I landed here in the middle because I don't care really what his 412 pick was. Monkas, you're the high man here. What do you got?
Yeah, this is very different comparing to my grade for K last year. So just want to start out by saying I do like the draft. Price, obviously, 106. Got the guy who was supposed to go there. Happy with that. And then I think what gets me to a B is I do like Branch. Um, Not as much Fields, but seeing both of them have an opportunity to compete to be the wide receiver two on their respective teams. And then we're all in lockstep on not being too high on Stribling, but knowing middle of the third, you get the sixth wide receiver off the board in the actual NFL draft. So he's at least got an opportunity there. And I put zero of the grade into Jamari Taylor. So
Huzzah, a man of culture. Moving on here to Cam Thorn, notoriously made it the big trade up to get 102 prior to the draft. Traded the great Amon-Ra St. Brown to Tyler, along with a fourth round pick for 102, 202, and was it 302 or was it a different third, Tyler?
It was 302.
302. Okay. So
No, I'm
obviously
sorry, it was not 304.
304. Okay. So then he traded the 202 down to get 2 seconds here. And he came out with this draft. He traded Amon-Ra to take a different receiver here in the first round, double quarterbacks in the back end of the second round, trying to hit those darts. Um, and I was pretty mixed on this one. Looking back at this now, I think I'd probably go a little bit lower. But we'll start with Cevan since you were the low guy here. We're a little bit closer of a spread on this one.
yeah, Cornell Tate at 102. Nothing really to say. You get the first receiver off the board in the NFL and the rookie draft. Steps into a good situation. So that's sick. And then back of the second, getting a few flyers. Washington needs help, so get a flyer on their rookie receiver. Carson Beck will likely see at some point this year, I would assume. It's kind of similar where all the quarterbacks went in the first rookie draft last year. Same with Drew Aller or Alar, whatever his name is. An opportunity. What round did he get drafted in? The fifth,
Third.
third. Drew Aller did,
Yes.
and
I
Carson
believe
Beck.
that's
Okay,
correct.
so a couple flyers on a quarterback needy team. I don't hate that. And then I thought Kalen Black was uh, at least appropriately valued, if not um, a nice value pick with the highest drafted running back for the 49ers in quite some time. So whether that's the handcuff for CMC or not, a dart throw for potential CMC handcuffs fine. So a C plus, that's average, isn't it? So don't hate it, don't love it. It is what it is. Um, you're lucky though, Thorn, that we're not talking about the trade, but I'm sure we'll get to that eventually sometime this summer.
Yeah, I think my original reason here for the B was that he traded for the 102, but didn't take a quarterback, but then took two flyers on, not technically flyers, they're still second round picks, but took two darts at quarterbacks in the second round, who both reasonably have a chance to see the field at some point this year. But um, yeah, I just can't get over the fact that he traded for 102 and then didn't take the quarterback when he's so desperate for a quarterback. So that's where I was off the B. But regardless, from what he did do, I didn't hate what he was at, which is where I landed on the B here. So Tyler, you were the highest at a B plus.
Yeah, I was. And to that point, I'll actually say I liked all three of Tate, Tyson, and Lemon over Mendoza. So I don't actually mind Tate at 102 there, even when you are considering that he's a little bit weaker at quarterback. So I like the Tate pick. I honestly liked four of the five picks here with Tate, Williams, Beck, and Kalen Black. I wasn't a huge fan of Drew Aller there at 211. I think if Thorn went with a wide receiver here, I probably would have, this maybe would have been my favorite draft of the league besides my own. That's a little bit of self-glaze.
Oh boy.
Uh, but all most of these picks here I thought were, within range and he got some good value. I mean, Kalen Black is similar to Stribling in that he jumped up the NFL boards and got higher draft capital than I think a lot of people were expecting. And so when you're at the 304 spot, I think it's kind of fitting that Kalen Black and Stribling went back to back there at 304 and 305. So I think that's great value there in the third round from Thorn. So overall, I really like this draft, but Aller was enough to bump it down to a B plus for me.
Hmm. Yeah, one of the more interesting drafts given the state of his team. I think a lot will be writing on how some of these guys turn out here. To Ian now. Did not come in with a ton of draft capital, but made some big moves, including trading Daniel Jones here to get the 110 from Tyler. Took a tight end here, Kenyon Sadiq, with 110, and then two running backs to end the draft here. We have a little bit of a spread. Cevan, you're the high man at an A minus, while I was down here at a C. So Cevan, we'll start with you again here. You were the high guy. What made you so high on Ian's draft?
Yeah, he obviously traded up for 110. I think it was great value for Sadiq being the second tight end off the board in our draft, the number 16 overall pick in the actual NFL draft. I think he could have went as high as 107 and he got him at 110. Uh, that was the basis of the grade. And then I was pretty high on Emmett Johnson. I think he's got an opportunity to be the clear RB2 in Kansas City. Uh, Not a, clear path to take over, but I was just higher on Emmett Johnson. And then third round, Katron Allen. That backfield's going to be messy, so that's what took it down from an A to an A minus. Nothing against Katron. He'll have an opportunity, as will all these rookies. It's just not a backfield that I want any part of, and it's hard to know what part you would even want. So overall, A minus, good with me. Love the value for Sadiq.
Um, I'm the low man here, Tyler. If you don't mind, I want to go first. I actually
Yep.
think I'd probably move mine up here to a B minus. Looking at it again, I think I let the trade kind of cloud my thoughts here. Sadiq overall, I'm not a fan of at all, and I wasn't a fan of him trading a quarterback to get that pick. But at the same time, like we said, we're not valuing picks, so I will move mine up to a B minus because I did like the Emmett Johnson pick. And for the value at 110, I think Sadiq was fine. But I still am just not a fan overall of Sadiq, and especially for his team when he's going to be, potentially needing a tight end. I just don't think Sadiq's that guy to help him in year one. And so trading up for a win now piece can be questionable in terms of the value there. But overall, I was fine with the two running back selections. Johnson surely will have a chance, like you said, to secure a handcuff spot. And Allen, I don't think him going to a messy backfield is a problem. I think that's probably a good thing for a third round rookie pick. There's an opportunity there to get carries, whereas Johnson's purely going to be a handcuff. So move mine up a little bit, but still not super high. Tyler, you're at a B minus here, now agreeing with me. Anything else to add?
Yeah, well, it's funny that you say I'm now agreeing with you because I think I'd actually move my grade up a tick as well. And it's really interesting just hearing what you guys liked and disliked because where I have issue with this draft is Emmett Johnson actually. I do like the value of Sadiq at 10. That's given how the board played out, that's probably who I would have picked there as well if I was Ian. But I've not been a big Emmett Johnson fan. I I don't feel like I don't know. In the second round, there's a lot of other players there that I had ahead of Emmett Johnson. I didn't like him before the NFL draft either. So I was just a pick that felt like a little bit of a reach to me. I actually prefer Katron Allen over Emmett Johnson. So, and I know obviously he got him there at 301, but Emmett Johnson just isn't my flavor. Otherwise, I do like Sadiq and Allen. So I think I probably dinged Ian a bit too hard with my grade in the Emmett Johnson pick there. But overall solid. Just not a fan of that 208
So,
pick.
sorry, it sounds like Reed, you said you'd move it up to a B minus. Tyler,
Hmm.
you'd probably move it up to a B.
Yeah.
Okay, so fair to say I talked you guys up.
Or Reed and I just have some anti-Ian bias
That
that we're
probably
uncovering or something.
you're
No,
welcome, Ian. I'm getting them to back on the what are you, the creamer team, the creamer
I,
clan.
I just think I didn't like the trade that he made, so I let that cloud my judgment on the grade here. So I I did these last night, so I would say that I was using inadmissible criteria for the grade, so that was my fault.
Yeah. And I think I like I said, I dinged him too hard with the Emmett Johnson pick.
You were dinging him all last offseason too. I didn't
Okay,
seem to mind that one.
okay.
On to the Monkas here. As we mentioned with Cam K, he did trade up for 105, trading Odunze and Brooks to get Mendoza, as well as adding another quarterback, two tight ends, and the previously injured but high upside Chris Bell. We all were relatively close here, B plus, A minus here. Tyler, we'll start with you. You are the low man, as you typically are on Cevan's team. What do you got?
Yeah, Mendoza at 105. Love it. Also, I am not the low man on Monka's team, am I?
You
Yeah,
were
you
during
are.
our power rankings in the first episode of the season.
You
Okay.
definitely are.
Sure, fine. Sorry, boss. Chris Bell at 206 and Max Clare at 306. Those are well, actually, I'll start with Chris Bell. I'm not a big Chris Bell fan, and I know we've talked about this ourselves, Savon, but he's not my guy. I do think you got him in an appropriate range. It's just the range he was going, there were several names that I always prefer in that range. So I get the pick, and I don't think you reached or anything. It's just he's not a name that I like there. I do think you got some value there with Max Clare in the middle of the third round, Clare being the third tight end off the board in the NFL draft. Even if that is a kind of a murky tight end room, he should be able to maybe see some valuable targets this year. We'll see. And, you know, I didn't factor this in as much, but it does help that you have Ferguson. So if one emerges in Los Angeles, presumably you'd have them. I think Taylor Green at 403 is just a throwaway fun pick. I don't think Taylor Green is something or ever will be anything. So there are some real names on the board still at 403. So that's just, and maybe I care too much about fourth round picks, but Taylor Green was just silly in my opinion. And then I do like your Justin Jolie pick at 404. So you had five picks there. Overall, it shook out to a B for me.
This is 5 picks here as one of the most in the league after he made 7 picks last season. So death taxes and Cevan getting involved in the rookie draft is something you can always count on. For me,
Yep.
I was the high guy here. I had an A minus. I would agree with the green pick being just a throwaway pick. Probably kept me from being an A here, but I like the rest of the draft. I did not like your trade for 105 personally, but we're not factoring that in. But getting Mendoza at 105, I'm a fan of. I'm a Bell fan as well, so I was happy with not just the range you got him in, but the player as well and the opportunity he could have, assuming he comes back all the way healthy. And then two tight end shots here with your tight end room looking like it is totally okay with that opportunity for both players to make an impact in year one if everything falls their way. So overall, I was definitely a fan of your draft. I thought you did good stuff outside of 403, which I mean, in the 1% of the time that he hits, he's really, really fun. But the chances of a 24-year-old quarterback who wasn't very good in college hitting, even with a really fun profile, just seems so slim, even for a fourth round pick. So probably one of the only times I let a fourth round pick ding the grade, but I just hold you to a higher standard, I guess, than everybody else. So, Savan, your own draft here, you gave yourself a B plus.
Yeah, I woke up this morning and had a slice of humble pie. That's what kept me in the B range. But no, I think Mendoza and Bell, I got at a good spot where they were supposed to go, around where they were supposed to go. I'm in on Bell, so uh, which makes sense. Tyler, I appreciate you agreeing with that's where he's supposed to go and just admitting that you don't know ball and don't know that he'll be elite. So moving on, Ty or Reed, I didn't need that dig at my tight end room. I think my tight end room's fine, so I didn't need that dig.
Yeah, it's
But
fine. You're giving yourself two upside options. I like that.
yes, but I think Max Clare was a steal. Um, could have made an argument. I could have taken him where I took Chris Bell, and he was still available in the middle of the third tight end off the board in the draft, both drafts, rookie draft and the real life. So like that upside shot. Taylor Green, it's just a fun player. You guys already touched on it. If you guys want to ding it for a fourth round pick, be my guest. That's fine. But just is it Jolly or Jolie?
I
I'm
think
gonna
it's
say Jolly. I
Jolly's
think
way more fun.
I
it
think
is.
it's
Yes.
Jolie though.
Either way, um, if you've listened to this podcast, you should know the hatred for Evan Ingram, and I've got these two Yahoos on board. There's really nobody else besides Evan Ingram that 22-year-old rookie tight end has ahead of him. So I think in the middle of the fourth, that's where I'm actually going to take into account a fourth round pick that has some serious upside and whatnot. But if he doesn't hit, he's just a fourth round pick. If he does, then I'm the best of all time. So
Maybe you'll get your own Harold fan in there, eh?
we'll see.
Okay, myself, we're here. The only person not to make a selection in this draft. I had two picks going into the offseason. I traded 408 for Geno Smith and I traded 309 for Rashad White. Uh, yeah, I don't have a whole lot else to say. I'm a team that's competing for a back-to-back championship, and while making picks is really, really fun, and I was really sad that I didn't get to hit draft on anybody this year, I undoubtedly think that my team got better compared to if I would have made a late third and a late fourth selection. So I'll pass it over. Who went first last time? Cevan, we'll go to you here. Thoughts on my moves that were not draft picks, I guess.
This, yeah, I mean, I'll take a fourth for a starting quarterback, even if it's, even if he doesn't hit the lineup, you at least have an option. And then Rashad White for 309, sure, take a dart throw in that Washington running back room. He's proved he's got startable flex upside before, so he can carve out a role, maybe throw him in the flex on a couple bye weeks, then you're happy.
Tyler, your thoughts?
Yeah, we didn't give out official grades for this, but I would give you an A plus, no glaze. I really like the move here for Rashad White, and in a short term scenario. So I have no issue with it. And yeah, the odds of you hitting on pick 309 are pretty low. And when you're trying to, you know, go back to back here, I think Rashad White could be a key piece if your team's hit with some bulk injuries or you get hit by a Mageddon, whatever it may be. I think Rashad White is a great pickup to kind of round out your bench depth and a lot more useful than 309 probably would have been this year.
hmm Well, I would have picked a 309 if someone didn't snipe me, which we'll talk about soon. But we're here. So yeah, not a whole lot to hear. Pretty boring draft from me, but I'm
I do
that.
commend you because it does take a lot of restraint um not to make picks or to trade out of them. And it's like I was looking at it. Ian actually didn't have any picks going into the draft, and he
hmm
acquired three, which is fine. I'm not saying, Ian has no restraint or anything like that, but I do think it's really difficult to just, like you said, not hit the draft button. I mean, we do this for fun largely, and so just to opt out of that takes a lot of restraint, but for good reason, of course.
There's just a dopamine hit when you hit draft on someone's name. So I agree it was tough, and I was looking forward, albeit for a third round pick, I was still looking forward to that pick and making the most of it, especially after I was able to derive some late round value last year. But yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yep.
Quest for back to back never stops. Now we're here, Rob. Relatively close spread for us as well. Traded up to 202 for Jonah Coleman and then some late round picks, two wide receivers, and Garrett Nussmeier. So Tyler, or not Tyler, sorry, Cevan, you're the low man here. You gave a C minus for his draft. Why is that?
Yeah, similar to what you did earlier, I forget with who, but I would probably bump it up to maybe a C, just because I did take into account the trade a little too much, or more than I should have, which I should have known. Jonah Coleman, I thought, was the clear RB3 for the rookie draft. Um, I just took too much of the trade into account. But
And I believe that trade, I think he traded 202 and he sent 207 and 209, I want to say.
yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. So basically two mid seconds for an early second.
Yeah, but Jonah Coleman, appropriate spot to go. And then I think the rest of the draft is just now I'm keeping it at a C minus. This was the one I was between a C minus and a D plus. Keeping it at a C minus. I think 310, 405, and 410s, all just nothing. I think Brennan Thompson's just small and fast and will never be a real piece. Garrett Nussmeier the obviously, okay, we're barking at fourth round picks here, but Garrett
So
Nussmeier.
you'll pick and choose where you ding for fourth round picks.
Well, so have you,
I just said you drafted a 24-year-old quarterback who went 2-10 last year in college.
and then said
The only spot
something
where I'll
about
ding someone for a fourth
exactly.
round.
So we're picking and choosing. Yes, but when
You
the
remember
whole
I gave you the
draft
highest
is
grade of any of us, right? Exactly.
the
Continue.
75% of the draft is the last 14 picks in the draft, 15 picks in the
That
draft. So
is also not true at all.
of this one,
Oh, his draft.
yeah.
Thought you meant in
So
general.
okay, I might have to restart here. I've been cut off too much. So we'll just start from here. 310, 405, 410, Thompson, Nussmeier, and Lance. I think they're all just nothings. I know it's the end of the draft, but that's what I got to grade. So yeah, C minus. Flirted with a D plus. Sorry, Rob, just not for me.
Tyler, middleman here.
Yeah, Jonah Coleman went exactly, where I thought he would go at the beginning of the second round there. So fine pick. It doesn't get me super excited, but I don't hate it or anything like that. I just think it's a good button to click there. I'm not a big Brendan Thompson fan. Cevan mentioned that he's kind of just a speedy, gadgety guy, and and it's the end of the third round, so can't be too critical of it. I really Garrett Nussmeier pick. I don't see where he sees the light of day on his rookie contract. I I would be surprised. I mean, you know the Chiefs better than I do, Reed. So do you think there's a scenario where Nussmeier works his way to be, the backup behind Pat during his rookie contract? I just feel like he's gonna always be kind of a third QB type of guy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not this year because they have Fields. He probably ends up being a practice squad guy for the whole season. But yeah, I think there's definitely a path for him to be that guy. I mean, they've historically always had a veteran backup. Blaine Gabbert, Chad Henne, and this year Justin Fields, Gardner Minshew. They've always had a veteran backup.
Hmm.
So I think if the view with this pick is, can we get a cost controlled backup for the next 3 years after this one? Because obviously they have Fields for this season. The issue that I have with it is that he's, like I said, almost surely going to be a practice squad guy all year. So how is he going to be rosterable going into next offseason when he
That's
spends
yeah.
the entire rookie season on a practice squad as a seventh round pick? How can you argue that he'll be rosterable this time next year pre rookie draft?
And yeah, that's kind of my thinking there. And I would just rather take a dart throw on a wide receiver that went, early day three or something like that. Which brings me to Bryce Lance here. I actually really, really like Bryce Lance. And, if I had originally had 406, I ended up trading that just because I don't need to be having 10 rookies on the team. But if I still had 406, I think I would have been looking at selecting Bryce Lance there. So I really like the pick of Bryce Lance at 410 there. And I think there's a real shot that he earns meaningful targets this year in the Saints offense, even after drafting Jordan Tyson. So overall, it was a C plus for me. Didn't really like the Brendan Thompson or Nussmeier pick. Maybe that's a bit too harsh, again, considering that these are later round picks, but that's where I came out.
Real quick before we move on, who has more targets this season, Bryce Lance or Bub Means?
Bryce Lance.
I really hope it's Bryce Lance.
Bryce Lance was a beast.
They still have Jalen Polk. Don't forget about him.
Swerly didn't forget. I'm the highest man on the draft here. I do like Brandon Thompson. I think you guys are discounting him a little bit on just calling him a short, fast guy with speed. I mean, he played outside for Mississippi State. So despite his stature, he was playing outside running real routes against SEC corners. So while it is easy to just call him a little gadget guy, I don't think that's what his profile has actually shown. But as I said, not a fan of the Nussmeier pick. I just don't think there's any world where he's rosterable this time next year. So almost a sure drop. But I don't mind the Lance pick at 410. And Jonah Coleman, while we're not factoring in the trade, just feels a little uninspiring for me at 202. I just don't think that. sorry, we're not factoring in trades, so it's hard for me to do that. But I just don't see a ton of ceiling there for him. So not a super inspiring draft for all of us, even though I did for the most part like his two late round receivers, but not big on the fourth round pick either. So or the 405. Moving into Sandy here. Pretty high grades across the board from all of us. A pretty clean one tight end, one running back, two receivers. Tyler, you're the low man here at a B, ranging up to an A minus for me. Tyler, why did you have a B on Sandy's draft here?
Yeah, it's I really had a hard time weighing this one. Mostly because of Eli Stowers going at 1-9 when Sadiq is on the board there. While I do really like Stowers, I still find myself having Sadiq a bit higher there. So I I love the player, but I don't love where he picked the player. If Stowers goes in the beginning of the second, I really like the value there a little bit more than 109. Omar Cooper was also still on the board. That's another player that I'm fond of. So I didn't love the Stowers pick. I did really like the value of Adam Randall at the end of the third round. I think he has a real shot at catching passes out of the backfield. Maybe take on the Keaton Mitchell role from a few years ago, where,
What's
you
the
know,
Keaton Mitchell role?
well, they're sorry, what we've seen Keaton Mitchell, Justice Hill do, where the Ravens are in close games or they're down, they need some pass catching out of the backfield, and we've seen where there's been a second half of a Ravens game and Derrick Henry's barely on the field just because they're running shotgun and every other pass feels like it's going to Justice Hill or Keaton Mitchell. I don't
Well,
Is that
they
just
still
me
have
or
Rasheen Ali and Justice Hill on the roster, so that's why
I know.
I'm
I
a little
know.
bit lower on Randall, but I see the vision, I guess.
I just I do really like Randall the player. I think that he was able to transition from wide receiver to running back, and he's only had one true season as a running back. I think there is maybe a lot. I don't, not a lot, but there's room for him to grow. How much he can grow as a running back is remain to be seen. But I like the pick there at 312 is I guess what I'm getting at. And Dion Burks, I really dislike Dion Burks. Um, was not a fan of that pick. So with all that being said, it shook out to a B for me. Stowers, Burks knocked it down a little bit. Randall bumped it up, and that KC, I mean, he's fine at 107. I don't have much to say there, even though that was his first pick.
Tyler, after everything you just said about Adam Randall, can I interest you in Brashard Smith? Late round receiver convert, 1 year as a running back, chance to carve out a passing game role. Can I trade you Brashard Smith?
I'll be all right. I'll spend
Okay.
94 fab on him.
Okay. Well, I'll just remember that for next time when you glaze 312 for being a poor man's Brashard Smith.
Okay.
Cevan, B plus from you. What do you got?
Yeah, I think Casey was a great pick at 107. The only thing that kept this out of an A for me was choosing Stowers over Sadiq. Um, but having Goddard does help that a little bit. So you at least have the tight end there. Um, I think everybody's a little higher on Stowers based off the combine and NFL show that I mean, it took him as the second tight end off the board. Goddard's dwindling down in his career, so I'm not digging it too much. But and then I'm on Tyler's side here. Adam Randall pick was great. He's still young too, and his size and stature, he's basically built like Derrick Henry. So Derrick Henry that can catch. Adam Randall will be the RB1 of the future after this season. And then opposite from Tyler, I like the Dion Burks pick. We're at the back of the fourth and was able to draft a receiver that has an opportunity to be the third wide receiver on the Daniel Jones led Colts. So I like the draft overall, one of the better ones in the league, based on relative to draft picks, draft spots, draft selections. So shout out the Goffdale Ball Hogs.
I was a little bit higher here. I actually don't mind the Stowers over Sadiq pick. I I think Stowers is a much higher ceiling. I'm not a Sadiq fan at all. So while I get draft capital wise, NFL draft capital wise, Sadiq was the pick. I don't hate the Stowers pick at all. I don't have any strong opinions on Burks or Randall, but took Concepcion, which is good at 107. So overall, I liked Sandy's draft. I think he supplemented what's already a good team with some more good players with some more ceiling to potentially add to his lineup this season. So overall, I was a fan as well. So now I move on to Schrader, the most active drafter in the league this season. 2 first round picks, 2 second round picks, 2 third round picks, and we all liked what he did. Took the obvious 101, a run of receivers, and then grabbed the highly athletic, presumably handcuff for Ashton Genty. So I was an A, Cevan's an A. Tyler, you're the low man here, hating on your homeboy Jeremiah Love at a B plus. Why is that?
I I really like the draft where with his first four picks, Love, Boston, Surratt, Brazel. I really dislike Mike Washington uh, overall, and I had him. I at 303, I guess it's fine, but again, he's just not my cup of tea. I I'm not as convinced that he's just a straight up handcuff to Genty. I think he could work in, but if Genty goes down, I don't think it's just wheels up for Mike Washington or anything like that. I was a bit lower on him in the pre-draft process. I do like the Klubnik pick at 309. I think there's a real shot that he is getting some snaps under center on Sundays this year. And then I really dislike the Michael Trigg pick. He was an undrafted free agent in the NFL, and I think there were more worthy dart throws at 411 there. Overall, really good draft. I probably didn't need to come in at a B plus. This is probably more of an A minus, just talking out loud, because I did really like the first four picks there, with Washington and Trigg being my only major issues.
Savan, you're tied with me. You also have an A here for Schrader, presumably one of, if not your top draft in the league.
Yeah, I think uh, this my grade factored in 411. I think, if that's Caleb Douglas or some of the UDFAs after our first run of waivers, that's what's keeping it from an A plus for me. I think the first 6 picks, uh, great value plus, you know, great value plus dart throws. The Cade Klubnik pick, I actually really like that. Um, Seems like another rookie quarterback that is destined to see the field at some point, at worst, at the back of the third round this season. Um, I'm on the opposite side of Tyler. I think Washington is clear handcuff for Ashton Genty. Whether or not they're a good offense, drafting someone who at least has the possibility, because we don't speak in guarantees around here, um, to take work if Genty goes down. That's great. And then Brazel, Surratt, Boston, all 3 receivers that have a chance to start outside from day one. And then obviously Jeremiah Love, nothing to be said there. But yeah, it's really just the Michael Trick pick that's holding it back from being an A plus. But A pluses are hard to get around here.
Yeah, I am was a huge fan of his first 5 picks. I'm Washington fan. I like the receivers that he took and the spots they did for the most part, and then Love was obvious. I am not a huge fan of the Klubnik pick. I think for the first number one, his team being where it is with Drake May and Jackson Dart, quarterback is not the position that I would want more dart throws at for him. I mean, his skill position groups are just decimated. They're just awful. So if I were him, I'd be taking a different dart throw at a non-quarterback position there. Um, Trig, I don't know a ton about, but I know he did not test as well as people were expecting for someone as old as him. Yeah, UDFA, probably not the move, but again, it's 411, so I didn't factor that in a ton. So I think the Klubnik pick was actually keeping me from being an A plus. I would have taken a different dart throw there, but overall, I think a very good draft for him, a chance to infuse a lot of talent into his position player groups that he severely lacked. So big Schrader draft, big fan of what he did.
Yeah, it's interesting that you aren't as big of a fan of the Klubnik pick, because I would think, Klubnik has a little bit better shot of seeing the field than some of these guys in the late third. So it just, if Klubnik does see the field and puts together some solid games, I think he could have some good trade value. And, you know, I know that's getting pretty far down the line and, uh, this kind of convoluted hypothetical, but I don't know. I think Klubnik has a chance to improve his trade value. And in that case is where he could kind of flip Klubnik for receiver running back depth.
I just think that we often associate a mid to late round quarterback with a bad quarterback room and just think, oh, they're going to start at some point. And I don't think that
Okay.
happens nearly as often as people think.
You're
I
probably
mean,
right.
he was a top 10 pick projected before the season and then ended up tumbling because of a very underwhelming, I would guess, season. So I just think that we're putting too high of a chance that he ends up playing or playing well this year.
He was a bit banged up, to be fair, and that's, you know, that type of prospect is something I usually like to take a shot on is, the prospect that fell because they had a down year, but they were also banged up. So you can maybe chalk up some of that to injuries, but I do see what you're saying.
But yeah, overall, good trader draft for me. On to Sumner, one of our more widespread opinions here. He notoriously has created strong feelings from every side across the draft for us, or across the league. Very polarizing as a front office GM of a fantasy football team. So, Cevan, we'll start with you. You're at an A, three receivers, and Ty Simpson, and you gave him an A. Tell us why.
Yeah, so two of these picks evened it back out. The If you take out Xavier Thomas, I have it at a B plus. If you take out Ty Simpson,
I'm
I have
sorry.
it
Oh,
at an
wait,
A.
sorry. Did you just say you had a B plus and then the 406 made him an A?
Yes. Take out, I'll just restart. To start off, uh, if you take out 406, I have him at a B plus, and if you take out Ty Simpson, I have him at an A plus. So, how did I get there? I think Ty Simpson's a fine pick. We all knew he was going to Sumner at some point. Just don't love who he went ahead of. There's probably three more players I would have taken ahead of Ty Simpson, but knowing Sumner, he loves his quarterbacks. Every dart throw he can get at quarterback, he'll take. Um, Omar Cooper, I was well, the only one. Everyone was pretty high on him. I think the landing spot sours it a little bit, but appropriate value for him. And then if you can our mock draft, um, Reed had Jeremy at 112, or Jeremy, sorry, at 112. So getting a second round pick, Steelers,
Savon,
huge thing.
you're cutting out here for me at least.
Yeah,
Still
a little.
cutting out.
Yeah, try unplugging and plugging your mic back in or something. So Tyler, we'll go over to you briefly here. You're at
Sure.
a B on
Is that
Sumner.
better?
Yeah, you sound good, Savan.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Just
Just
start from you start talking about Jeremy.
Oh yeah, Jeremy Bernard. Reed had him in our rookie mock at the back of the first. So according to that value, that's a great pick. Love the player, hate the landing spot situation, but still good player. And then Xavier Thomas is what gets us back into an A. You're talking about a speed demon, all around wide receiver getting thrown into a Ben Johnson offense,
Dude,
tied to Caleb Williams,
So
playing
this is the
off
same guy that
Rome,
was bashing on
Luther,
Brennan Thompson
and
like 2 minutes
Colston
ago.
and Kmet just gets to he's going to stretch the field. He's going to
Okay.
hit
I
some
think
deep
we can move
shots.
on now.
He's going to be a player that you're going to be able to start in your lineup, and you're getting that in the middle of the fourth round. Killer draft summer.
I think we can move on now. Tyler, what do you got here? You're at a B.
Mhm. Yeah, I do like. I'll start off with my favorite pick, and that was Omar Cooper at 111. I actually would have had Omar Cooper going at 108. That's where I had him in my pre-draft rankings. Um, so I do like that value there. I struggle with the Simpson pick. I That's the appropriate range for Simpson. That's where I imagine he was going in most drafts. It's just for Sumner's team specifically, I would have loved to see him come out with two receivers, but I'm not gonna act like he's doing anything wrong considering that he's had success in this league. So if he likes Ty Simpson, at 108. More power to him, and I'll be really curious to see. You know, it's yeah, I'll be really curious to see pick how that pick matures over this next year. My I really do love the Jeremy pick as well at 205. I had him as a good value there. I had him going a little bit sooner than that in my pre-draft mock. And then Xavier Thomas, this is just so so much unneeded glaze for Xavier Thomas. I did not have him ranked particularly favorable. So overall, it was a B for me. Simpson and Thomas kind of tripped me up a bit, and that's where I came in.
I think looking at mine, I probably move mine up to a B minus. I love the Cooper pick, love the Jeremy pick. Don't really care about the Thomas pick at the end, but I can't get over the Ty Simpson pick for someone like him whose roster is so elderly at most positions and the depth that he already has at quarterback. While I don't advocate for taking positions of need, quarterback is just such a not a position of need, coupled with his unwillingness to trade any of those quarterbacks for other positions, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, even though we all knew it was going to happen. So I just think this ends up being a moot pick for a team that made the championship last year, taking a quarterback who presumably starts no games in the fantasy season next year, unless Matthew Stafford is hurt, which is technically a possibility, but that's not why you're drafting him. So I just think it didn't make a lot of sense to me, even though, again, we all predicted it to happen. But the rest of the draft, it was good. When you have a first round pick that I dislike the process so much on it, it definitely dings it down for me. But like I said, I would move it up to a B minus because I was a fan of his next two picks.
Real quick, I think it would have just felt a lot better if you just swapped Simpson and Cooper. To me,
I
personally.
agree. Yes, that it would feel better, but in the end of the day, again, a lot of it came down to the fact that he has nine quarterbacks already, and he just made the championship, and he took a player in the first round who has no chance of helping him this year.
Yeah, but if you go back to his process last year, he was able to flip McCarthy, a young quarterback, for two firsts. So
That's
maybe he's
because
just
people like
thinking
you
long
believed in
term.
him.
I will
We
say
didn't trade him to me.
I'd be very surprised if he didn't move a quarterback before the season starts.
Well, yeah, he immediately put Trevor Lawrence on the block, which
Yeah.
the best quarterback on the team. So I don't
Yeah,
know. We
putting
all
a player on the block and actually moving a player are very different. So we'll see. On to Swirl. Swirly 15 here. A's from Tyler and Cevan and a B minus from me. You're looking at two fourth round picks here, so all we have to evaluate is a fourth round pick. I probably a little bit too harsh here. Probably move mine up to a B, but Skylar Bell's fine value in the beginning of the fourth. I told the guys in the chat I don't even know who the tight end is, so somewhat of an incomplete there from me, but it's Swirly. So he got that 408 from me in a trade that I don't think benefited him that much, but that did not factor in. So, Tyler, we'll start with you here. You gave him an A.
Yeah. Do you know how to pronounce the tight end's name?
Casameric.
Yeah. I was just making
It
sure
just sounded
because
out. It wasn't super
yeah.
difficult.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, I mean we can only grade on, what he selected here and that he had two fourth round selections and with the names on the board here, I actually really liked, who he came out with Skyler Bell, Will Kacmarek. Will Kacmarek was my tight end eight. So I had I think one or two guys above him that I liked that went undrafted, but still, acceptable range for him there. And then Skyler Bell. Going at 4.2 was right in the range I had Skylar Bell. So I think, for what he made the most of it, and I don't see any reason not to give him an A for that.
Svan, any differing thoughts there?
Yeah, I think similar to what you said about Garrett Nussmeier, it's going to be hard to find a reason for Skylar Bell to be rosterable at this time next year,
Okay.
just based
What?
on
Let's just let's just move on.
The Bills depth chart. That's what kept this from an A plus for me. Is I think Will Kacmarek is way more intriguing. He was the backup tight end at Ohio State, also behind Jeremiah Love and Carnell Tate. Ooh, that
What
was a
the hell
bar.
did you just say?
That was a bar. So
He
he's
said
just got a
Jeremiah
lot of
Love.
sorry, Jeremiah Smith. Um, but yeah, obviously the Dolphins wide open. So, it's just Greg Dulcich there. Skylar Bell, I think, is a big nothing burger.
How are we?
Um,
This hold up. That's comparing Skylar Bell's situation to Garrett Nussmeier. I just think is
I
so
said
wrong.
similar to what Reed said.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I
that's
don't think
just
he's gonna.
not
I
only
don't
is
think he's
that
gonna see the
wrong,
field. So
but
I
you
don't.
also gave him an
I'm not gonna
A
see
and
how
you
theirs
hated one
were.
of his picks.
Yeah, they're fourth round picks.
see,
So that's not
But
how that
I'm just
works.
talking about the players.
you don't think you don't think Skylar Bell has seen the field in his rookie year?
I I don't think he's gonna.
Tyrell
I don't.
Shavers was your wide receiver too last year.
Okay, that, that might be true. But yeah, I don't see him making an impact or being, getting promoted off taxi. Not that Swirl needs him to, but just on a standard roster, I don't think Skylar Bell makes a fantasy impact this year, making it hard
That's
to,
like most fourth round picks though.
yeah,
So again, you gave someone an A and you hated one of their picks. How does that one of his two picks? How's the math there?
because they're fourth round picks, and I like
That's all
the
you have to evaluate is
situation
two fourth
for
round picks.
correct, but Will Kastmeric, I'm a fan of the selection there,
Okay,
so
we're
balances
moving
this
on
out.
from this. Trent, the widest spread here. Cevan at an A minus. Tyler and I both at D's. So Cevan, I regrettably we're going to go to you first here. Uh, maybe we're taking the same math here that he has three picks and there are late thirds and fours, so the grade's just by default an A. But what do you got here?
Yep. Well, big fan of the Oscar Delp pick. All he's got is Jawan Johnson ahead of him. Going into this year, uh, he was a projected first round pick, tight end from Georgia. So big fan of that pick. Claiborne, like the opportunity he has. Aaron Jones getting super old. We're in the fourth round. Jordan Mason is just a one trick pony. And then back of the fourth, receiver, one of the three receivers that got drafted by the Dolphins in a wide open wide receiver room. So I like the upside for all three of these players. I think all three of them have an opportunity to carve out a role, making them, a viable piece on the Rex's roster.
Yeah, I just don't get. First off, you're saying he only has Juwan Johnson ahead of him. It's not like he's not like he wasn't really good last year and a productive NFL player. Like it works if you're saying that about Greg Dulcich and Kaczmarek, but you can't say that about a player who was actively a good football player last year just because you can't name their backup tight end. That doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, I have a D. He took Coleman at 407 over the a Douglas who was much higher drafted for the Dolphins. Claiborne just kind of whatever. I mean, they already have two running backs there, and Delp. While I don't mind the pick. He is behind Juwan Johnson, but there is room. He's an athletic guy that's has a chance. But overall, I just don't see any impact. Guys who really have a chance to make an impact this year for him and a team that's presumably trying to win more fantasy games. Tyler.
Yeah, I am a big hater of Oscar Delp. I don't see what the appeal is here. I mean, when he was at Georgia, he was getting taken off the field. It's not even like he had the full-time tight end role with Georgia. So, why is that going to change here when he makes the leap to the NFL? I don't see how, you know, when his best season was 2023 when he had 284 yards. I don't see how Oscar Delp is making the leap to fantasy relevance. I so again, there are a lot of picks in the at 308 there that I liked more than Delp. That's honestly one of my least favorite picks of the draft. That's no offense, Trent, not personal or anything like that. Just Delp is not for me, and I'll happily admit, if I'm wrong on Delp in a year or two. I don't mind Claiborne at 401. I think that's a pretty solid dart throw and someone who could get good playing time this year. I totally agree with you, Reed, about what you said on Kevin Coleman, just with Caleb Douglas being drafted to the Dolphins in the third round. I'm not a huge fan of that pick either. So, um, yeah, I was at a D as well, and um, that's okay.
And that's okay is how we end off Trent's section. Finally, we have Tyler's draft here. Bro's been studying since September, so thankfully he had a good draft here. Two A's and a B plus. Cevan, we'll start with you. You're the low man. Four receivers, including Ted Hurst, a running back, and a tight end. But you're the low man. Give us the reasoning.
Yeah, I know Tyler loves his receivers, so he had to mix in a running back at 204. But uh, I guess you stuck to your own process, so I don't know. But I probably just think that was too early based on the guys that were there.
For who? For Singleton, you're saying?
Yeah, like I know you already started with two receivers, but
Hmm.
I wonder if you got a little bit, jumpy at wanting to switch it up. I was surprised you didn't take Bernard there, to be honest. But you've followed your own process. Ted Hurst keeps this out from being an A minus for me. Um, shouldn't be on your team. That's really the whole reason. And then Jacoby Lane, so we'll see. They've got an elite play caller there with Declan Doyle, so maybe they'll be able to make four pass catchers relevant. And then Eli Raridan's fine. End of the third round, potential. Uh, well, tied to Drake May, and then potentially, get to learn from the great top 12 tight end, Hunter Henry. So great draft overall. Couldn't really mess it up at the top. Um,
Well,
we're
he
not
definitely
talking
could
about
have
the
messed it
trade,
up at the
but
top.
no, impossible. But yeah, we're not mentioning the trade, but that was a good one.
Yeah, I had an A as well. I liked going double receiver at the top if you weren't convicted in Mendoza. I agree, Singleton, a fifth round running back there. I don't really care what the situation is there. A fifth round running back at 204 was probably a little much for me. But I liked both your third round receivers, including especially Lane, who was my guy that I was shooting for at 309. Then you traded up and sniped me. So you're the reason that I made no picks this draft. So you're the reason I had no fun, Tyler. Congratulations. But other than that, I thought you had a really good draft. Your team is in a much better spot than it was pre-draft, which is a good thing. But we'll see how that plays out in the NFL season. But for now, you're riding high. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, I'll just touch on, two of the guys that we've talked about already. With Singleton, I was really high on him before the NFL draft. I had him as, I want to say, my fourth running back. He showed a lot of pass catching ability at Penn State. Was really explosive in 2022 as a freshman and in 2024. So I know he got drafted in the fifth round, but it was kind of an upside shot there. I don't think there was a lot of players there, Jeremy included, that give you the upside that Singleton possibly could. Obviously, that is a pretty small chance, but in a weaker draft class, I'm willing to take that shot at 204. Lane, I think it's pretty crazy that Jacoby Lane got drafted ahead of Surratt and Elijah Surratt went 201. Lane um, got picked at 307. I wasn't actually looking to pick Lane after Hurst. I figured Lane would be picked in the next one or two picks after Hurst, but when Cam put 307 on the block and Lane was still there, I felt you know, I felt like I needed to move up there and get a guy that I liked a good bit there. What did not know you liked Tim Reed, so I guess kind of funny that I sniped you there, but overall I felt a lot better about this draft than I did my draft last year, and I thought it was a good time.
Yeah. Well, that's all the teams that we have here. Any concluding thoughts here on the second annual Fine Dining rookie draft?
I think overall this draft was a little bit more chalk or consensus than last year was. I don't know if you guys have similar thoughts.
Or at least the first
Yeah, I don't. We didn't really
round.
have any shocking picks. We had shocking trades, but not shocking picks necessarily that went down. Whereas I feel like there was a few last year that caught us off guard.
Yeah, definitely. It's yeah, I don't know.
Savon, any final thoughts from you before we wrap up?
Monkas.
That okay, we're good with that. Okay, well, that's it for us this week. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.